Let's analyze this. So, Inside the Ropes recently did a sit-down interview with the legend himself, Mr. Y2J, Chris Jericho, first ever undisputed WWE champion in history and former overall 6-time world heavyweight champion, about his infamous disappointing match at WrestleMania 18 back on March 17th, 2002 against Triple H for the undisputed WWF Championship. Of course, this coincided with the 17-year anniversary of WrestleMania 18 of that match just a couple of days prior. So let's see what they have to say. Let's see what he has to say, I should say. Excuse me.
Yeah, let's be honest. Main event, in the fact it was on last, but the main event of the show was Hogan and Rock. And
Agreed. That match had the most appeal to it. I don't want to say it had the best build, but it had the most appeal. Because to me, both matches had the best build. But if you really look at it in the grand scheme of things, Jericho and Triple H had the better build. And it had the more intriguing storyline because it was Triple H coming back from a grueling quad tear. Which, Triple H was never the same after that quad tear. To me, Triple H was at his best from 98 to 2001. Up until that quad tear. And a lot of people are, they're very hell-bent on the idea that tag match between him and Austin as the two-man power trip against Jericho and Benoit was arguably one of the all-time great tag matches that doesn't get enough credit because of the quad tear. The quad tear kind of takes away from the overall match because most fans remember the quad tear as opposed to what happened before the quad tear. And I agree with those people that share that sentiment.
I knew it. And I was actually, most people would be pitching to have their match on last. I was pitching for it not to go on last. Because I said, how do you follow Hogan and Rock? And Triple H, and probably, rightfully so, was fighting for the title match to be last. But
the thing is that, and I just watched the match a few minutes ago before I did this video. I wanted to rewatch the match because I hadn't seen it in about 2-3 years. I think I hadn't watched it since I got the network, which I didn't get the network until about a week before WrestleMania 30. So I got it about 2.5, almost 3 weeks after it launched. Actually, over a month after it launched was when I got it. I didn't get it right away when it launched, but it had been a couple of years since I last watched the match, so I wanted to rewatch it, and I just did. I watched it on the WrestleMania Rewind. I didn't want to watch it on the collection of Jericho, because on Jericho's collection, the match is there too. But in order to get the full context and be able to talk about this video in full retrospect and the proper perspective, I wanted to watch the WrestleMania Rewind. But anyway, they could have topped Rock and Hogan. Let me explain why. They could have topped Rock and Hogan. The only problem is that the match was primarily focused on Triple H recovering from the quad tear. They played up to it, rightfully so, because it brought psychology. It brought a greater psychology to the match, a greater storytelling aspect to the match, and it made it more intriguing of, can Triple H do this? Can Triple H pull away with the win? It did that, but in a way, them doing that hampered what Jericho and Triple H actually could have brought to the table in terms of the match. Because that match had the potential to be better than Rock and Hogan. And it could have been better than Rock and Hogan, but they were so caught up on the storytelling and the psychological aspect of it that it ended up not being as great as Rock versus Hogan, because the crowd was into it. I don't want to say the whole match, but the crowd was amped up and live and excited throughout at least 90 to 95% of the match. Don't get it twisted. This match between Jericho and Triple H at WrestleMania 18, it was not like Triple H and Randy Orton at WrestleMania 25, where literally everybody was sitting on their hands and like there was no real reaction until damn near the end of the match, or at least until that random RKO spot that happened in the beginning. It wasn't like this. It wasn't like this where the fans weren't really into it and they were tired from Shawn and Undertaker literally giving us the greatest WrestleMania match of all time. It wasn't like that. For Jericho and Triple H, people at the Skydome, they were still alive. And they were still like amped up. So the crowd reaction was not the problem. Once again, I maintained the sentiment that what it was that they were so focused on the storytelling and the psychology, a little too focused on the storytelling and psychology, that it took away from the amazing athleticism and technicality that we could have saw, that we should have saw.
Couldn't follow it. We just couldn't, and you could see the air go out of the room. That's a match I've never watched it back, because I remember being kind of disappointed in it. You know, main event of WrestleMania. And I remember talking with CM Punk years later, and one of his big reasons why he left wrestling was he was really mad that he wasn't the main event of WrestleMania. He wasn't on last. I said, dude, you worked with The Undertaker at WrestleMania. That's the main event. Like any Taker matches. He goes, well, you can't say that because you were on last. And I'm like, okay, I was on last, but I wasn't the main event. You know, just because you're on last does not make you the main event per se, but still, we were on last.
Well, being last is the definition of the main event. That's why they call it the main event. Main as in primary, as in solo, as in one, as in singular. That's why they call it, they don't call it mains event, even though I don't think you could even formulate that word. But they don't call it mains event, they call it main. Main as in primary. There's no such thing as multiple primaries. There's only one primary. That's why it's called the main event. That's the point of it being last.
And I can say I still have the card at home that they gave out with the programs. It was an old school card that had all the matches. The WrestleMania main event, Jericho versus Triple H. And with my legacy established, and you know, some people saying that Jericho's the GOAT and all this other shit. At the time, I was the first.
He's an all-time great. There's no doubt about it. But the GOAT, I mean, different strokes for different folks, right? I guess.
First undisputed champion, but that was the end of the line. It took me 2001 to 2008. It took me 7 years to win the title back again, and that run with the Undisputed Championship, to win it was great, but the whole run with it was terrible for me, like in my opinion. The angles were I was the champion, but I'd be on the fourth on the show. You know, my original idea for that angle was Triple H was hurt, and when he came back, I was gonna say, like, dude, like, your wife's having an affair on you, and the affair was she's having an affair with Rob Van Dam. And
whoa, what? Seriously, man? Damn. Wow. Okay, this is news to me. This is new, and this is news to me. I never heard this shit before. Wow. Does RVD even know this? I doubt it. Damn. What? An affair with Rob Van Dam, Stephanie and Rob Van Dam. Bruh. Wow.
We would go through the thing, he doesn't believe it, I have video proof, you know. And then go into the ring and say, listen, man, we don't see eye to eye, but I can't stand for this anymore. Your wife's having affairs with Van Damme, and then show a video of like, you know, guy with a ponytail making out with Stephanie in bed, whatever, and then turn around and it's me with the Rob Van Dam hair, and then I'm standing behind him with the sledgehammer and I kill him, right? Which starts with me and Stephanie, and we're together and we're in love, and that's kind of the whole angle, and Triple H wouldn't go for it.
Oh, okay. Alright, well, that sounds... It doesn't sound extremely better, but it sounds slightly better. I don't think the fans would have bought into it. I mean, it was kind of bad enough that they made Stephanie Jericho's manager, because even that was like, wait a minute, after all this time of Jericho calling you a filthy, dirty, smelly, stinky, slutty, trash bag hoe, whatever the hell he said, all those damn words, and now you fuck with him? What? You're his manager now? What? Like, just that alone was unbelievable and strange. This would have made it even a million times stranger.
He said that my character would never be so stupid to, you know, fall for this, and my wife would never have an affair on me. So it ended up being that.
Exactly. Agreed.
Stephanie and I were business associates, and she was like more the focal point than me. And I remember seeing a WrestleMania graphic for the main event of WrestleMania, and you see the still shot, and it was Triple H versus Chris Jericho with Stephanie McMahon, but man's being behind me, she was in the front and I was behind her. I remember calling Kevin Dunn going, dude, I'm the champion. Like, I get what's going on, but you gotta change that graphic. It's like Triple H versus Stephanie with me in the background. It was just more of a kind of a forgotten thing. So
I think that was just to piss Chris off. I think that was something that just kind of, I think they were trying to test him to see how he would feel about that, to be honest. And I think that Kevin Dunn probably expected Chris to like completely flip off, and he didn't. He was a lot calmer about it than they expected, because if you remember, and Chris has gone on to talk about this numerous times, Chris was going to leave the WWE, or the WWF back then. He was going to leave in, I believe, early 2000. He was going to leave, because if you remember when he came in, his debut, you know, he face to face with The Rock, it was huge, got a huge pop, got a huge response. He went toe to toe with The Rock on the mic and he held his own, all of this, and then literally within 2-3 months he was doing nothing. Like, he was literally doing nothing. He was having short ass matches on Raw and SmackDown. He had a random feud with Road Dogg that went nowhere. Like, just all of that stuff. And then on top of that, he turned heel out of nowhere, because he came in as a babyface, or at least he came in as a perceived babyface. He turned heel out of nowhere. It was mad random, and like, they were just doing nothing with him. And Jericho didn't really start gaining momentum that he had gotten in his debut, in my view, until they did the tease of him beating Triple H for the title on that episode of Raw in early 2000, where they did the title change, but then Jericho had to return the title and all of that, and that was literally one of the biggest pops, not just in WWE history, but in Jericho's career that he had ever gotten. It was an infamous match. I believe it was I want to say it was January 9th, 2000 episode of Raw. I could be wrong. One of you peeps can correct me if I'm wrong. But I know it was early 2000. That I know.
the build-up for the match wasn't great. The positioning of the match wasn't great. And in my opinion, the match wasn't great. But I can say I was in the main event of WrestleMania. So there you go.
Alright, well, that's it. Chris Jericho's view on his quote-unquote disappointing main event at WrestleMania 18 against Triple H for the Undisputed title. Once again, like I stated before, the match wasn't great, and it could have been great, and it should have been great, but it wasn't, because I think that it was too much of an overemphasis on the psychological aspect of the match, the storytelling of the match, of Jericho just chopping and chopping away at Triple H's leg, trying to shatter his quad again to the point where he can't wrestle no more, period. They focused a little too much on that, and you could see that they did that, and you know, Triple H had to sell to the point where he couldn't do everything that he wanted to do, or that he was accustomed to doing while healthy, and you could see that. So I'm out.